Fáilte rud gach duine agus nollig chunne díobh go léir. Welcome everyone and a very happy Christmas to each and every one of you. My name is Paudie and I'm coming to you from the National Leprechaun Museum. This Christmas is a Christmas quite unlike any other. I don't think the earth has experienced a Christmas like this in a very, very long time. But there's one thing that every Christmas, no matter what's going on in the outside world, has, and that is stories. Stories, storytelling. That is part of the heart of what Christmas is. Now, I don't care whether you get your stories from the TV or from the Christmas book, but I think you'll all agree that there is nothing better at Christmas than a good story. And as this Christmas has been so difficult, and as 2020 has been so difficult, I think it would be a good idea to tell the kind of story that always cheers me up. It's my favourite story, and in this story I'm going to tell you about someone very special. I'm going to tell you about the Queen of the Leprechauns, Queen Bebo. Now, Queen Bebo rules over the tiny island of Fay Linn. Fay Linn lies about halfway between Ireland and Scotland. It is a magical island in that everything about it is leprechaun-sized. Whether it's the trees, the mountains, the grand halls or the small houses, everything is to leprechaun scale. Queen Bebo rules there, along with her husband, Leprechaun, and she has heard that the human king of Ulster, King Fergus mac Léti, makes exceptionally good porridge. She loves porridge. I like a bit of porridge myself. I have it every morning. And she says to her husband, "I will not sleep until I taste some of this fabulous porridge." The king of the leprechauns realised fairly quickly that when his wife doesn't get any sleep, well, he doesn't get any sleep either. So he agrees to embark on a little bit of an adventure with her. They sail in their tiny boat across the stormy channel. They make it all the way through the dangerous countryside, but they lose all of their soldiers, all of their hangers-on. They find themselves now alone before the huge storm drain into the castle. And they make their way up through the drain, doing battle with the rats and the cats who are huge before them as they make their way to the kitchen. The kitchen is very warm, and they see the huge porridge pot looming before them. They get 2 stools and they place one on top of the other before they climb on board. They're reaching down, ready to scoop some of this fabulous porridge up towards them, when what should happen? But of course, they fall in. The King of Ulster walks in to check on his award-winning porridge to find 2 leprechauns scrabbling about in the porridge pot. And it dawns on him that wouldn't it be nice to have 2 leprechauns around the house to show off when visitors call. Maybe it would be nice. I'm not so sure. In fact, I'm sure it would be pretty chaotic. It kind of doesn't matter because, and this is where things get very interesting, gradually over time, King Fergus mac Léti falls more and more madly in love with the Queen of the Leprechauns. He finds it a little bit awkward, a little bit embarrassing to have her husband around during their courtship, so he sets Leprechaun loose. Leprechaun, being a bit of a scaredy cat, sailed immediately home without his wife and told the Leprechaun people what had happened to their queen. They are justifiably outraged and demand that something simply must be done. Imagine if Queen Elizabeth II left her home in Buckingham Palace to set up shack in Trump Tower. It would be outrageous. Everyone would demand that something simply must be done. So the leprechauns sent 3 of their best across the stormy channel to rescue the Queen and assassinate King Fergus mac Léti. That's right, leprechaun assassins! Bet you weren't expecting that in your Christmas story. Assassin's Creed leprechauns? Now there's a game I'd like to play at Christmas. The leprechauns follow Fergus around for about a week, and they discover that aside from making very good porridge, he isn't very good for much else. His favourite pastimes were drinking, fighting, gambling, and having a bit of a lie down. Bit of a kip, a bit of a sleep. Now we all have that one person in our life, don't we, that seems to spend about 90% of their day either drunk or asleep. Well, Fergus was one of these people. And the leprechauns, they find Fergus asleep on the beach. You have to really enjoy your sleep if you're willing to sleep on a beach in County Antrim. And they say to one another, "Now boys, let us seize our chance. We'll throw him into the sea." So they pick Fergus up. Remember, they're quite small. He's quite fat and heavy. And they gingerly, see what I did there, carry him all the way to the top of the cliff. But just before he's about to go over, Fergus wakes up, and in an epic struggle, he grabs the 3 leprechauns together and holds them close to his chest, a little bit like this. Now, not everybody knows this, because it is top secret. But if you capture 3 leprechauns together, they are obliged to give you a wish. No trying to escape. No backing out of it. No backfires. One true, one pure wish. And if you think about it, Fergus mac Léti, in one sense, already has everything. He's the king of Ulster, after all. So he wishes for nothing more. "I'd like to be able to breathe underwater." The leprechauns agree to this unusual request, and they give the king a pair of magic shoes. Now, some people really like their shoes, and if you like your shoes, you'd love these shoes, because they are the deepest, bluest velvet, and embroidered or sewn into the toes is a pair of golden sunrises. And these magic shoes, they give Fergus the ability to breathe underwater. But the leprechauns say to the king, "Now you listen here, human. There is one place in this entire world that you must not go. You must not go beneath the waves of Dundrum Bay." I want you to think this through with me. Fergus is an Irish king. More importantly, he's an Irish man. So the one place in this entire world he is not allowed to go to, well, it was the first place he went to. And there, beneath the cold, choppy waters of Dundrum Bay, Fergus discovered not gold nor riches, but an enormous, ferocious sea monster known as the Moordish. The Moordish is 99.999% teeth and spikes. Oh, it's hideous. It's the ugliest thing you will ever see. It's also the Irish version of Medusa. You may remember Medusa from your studies in schools. Or you might be watching a favourite film of mine, Clash of the Titans, on the TV this Christmas. When you saw Medusa, you became frozen forever in stone. When you saw the Moordish, though, he was so ugly that your face became frozen forever in an expression of pain, fear, and shock. A little bit like this. Now, you may remember when you were a very small child, your mother saying to you, don't make funny faces, because if the wind changes, it will be stuck like that. That might have just been my childhood. My mother was always saying things like, a swan will break your arm. As a child, I believed that swans were creatures roaming the streets, breaking people's arms, and not those beautiful birds you see swimming in the canals. It might have just been my childhood. Maybe I'm the only one that had a mother who told me that when the wind changes, your face might freeze. But it's also, in a sense, what happened to Fergus Léti. He went through the rest of his life with a funny face. Needless to say, the Queen of the Leprechauns didn't want to spend the rest of her very long life with a man whose face was eternally screaming. So she escaped from the castle in the dead of the night, like a small tiny ninja. She sailed immediately home for her island kingdom of Fay Linn. The Leprechaun people rejoiced to have their queen return to them, and they swiftly let bygones be bygones, which is the only way to live, if you ask me. There was a month-long party with plenty of good food, plenty of good drink, and of course, plenty of good crack. Meanwhile, back in Ireland, what's happening with Fergus Léti? Well, the interesting thing about being king in ancient Ireland was that one was obliged to be physically perfect. So imagine the most attractive person you know. Not the smartest person, not the most hard-working person. Imagine the best-looking person you know, and you put a shiny cloak on them and a crown, and you say, you're the boss now. Well, I can't say it was the best type of government, but moving swiftly on. So Fergus is in danger of losing his job. He doesn't want to lose his job, it's quite nice being king. So he goes to the Druids and asks for help. The Druids tell him that he should spend the rest of his life in a darkened room. Now Fergus isn't sure how this will work, but the Druids tell him it will work if he stays inside in the dark room and he conduct even the business of government through a series of messengers. But there was one type of person that always knew Fergus's secrets. That was the servants. There's one thing that kings aren't willing to do for themselves, and that's the ordinary, everyday things, like pick up after themselves, dress themselves, or wash themselves. And one day Fergus sends for the serving girl to come and wash his hair. He's that lazy. And she's very slow in coming, and when she eventually arrives kind of nonplussed about it all, she's like, yeah, what do you want? And he said, you are the laziest servant I have ever owned. It was actually quite garbled because remember, he's screaming. And she rather glibly replied, and you're the ugliest king I have ever washed. In that moment, Fergus knew that the servants would always be able to hold it over him that he was secretly ugly. So he did the only thing